Welcome to the video on sentence correction for GMAT. My name is Preetinder Kaur and you can note down my email address over here. In case you want me to make some more videos on any particular topic or you have some valuable feedback to share, you can always email me at preetinder_89@hotmail.com. So let's get started with sentence correction video for GMAT. Now here are the topics that we'll be covering in this series of videos. We'll be starting with an overview of the GMAT. We'll go to a brief review of the grammar, which is basically just a review of the different parts of speech, and then we'll start with the topics one by one. The first error that is also covered in this video is subject-verb agreement. After that, we'll move to verb tense errors, pronoun errors, parallelism and comparisons, and modifiers and idioms. So an overview of the GMAT, I'm sure you will be knowing about the test structure. You have the AWA section, integrated reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and finally the verbal reasoning section. And I'm sure you know about the test scoring as well. You get a raw score from 6 to 51 in each quantitative as well as the verbal section. And finally you get a total score of 200 to 800. Now the adaptability, you know that the GMAT is a computer adaptable test. Now why is it so? That's because the level of difficulty of the next questions that you'll be getting depend on the accuracy of the questions that you have already attempted. In simple words, that means if you start correcting the answers and you start giving correct answers, the level of questions that you will get will start getting more difficult. But if you are giving all the wrong answers, you will start getting easier questions. So that is how the GMAT is adaptable, and obviously you'll be getting more scores per difficult question that you attempt correctly. Next thing about question types. Now in the verbal section you have 41 questions that you have to do in 75 minutes. So you have three types of questions: reading comprehension, sentence correction, and critical reasoning. Now about pacing. Now pacing is very important. You get just 75 minutes for 41 questions, that is less than 2 minutes. Ideally, for each sentence correction question, you need just around 45 seconds. For reading comprehension and critical reasoning, you can take more than a minute. So that is how your pacing should go. However, you should be able to develop your own pacing strategies as you keep on practicing for the GMAT. The next thing is very important: process of elimination and scratch work. Now in all the types of questions of the verbal section, you need the process of elimination. You do not have to run after the correct answer. Instead, run after the wrong answer. First predict your answer, what it should do, and cross out all the answers or all the options that you think are completely wrong. So here is when you use your scratch paper. On your scratch paper, just write down the question number, write down the 5 options A, B, C, D, and E, and eliminate which ones you think are wrong. So this is going to be a process of elimination. So at the end, if you want to reattempt that question, once you have just eliminated 3 options, let's suppose, and you're still left with 2, you want to read the question again, you can read it. Now when you have read the question the second time, you don't need to answer or check for the other 3 options because you've already eliminated them. So you can just look at the 2 options, check the difference between them, and finally you can go ahead and solve the question. Now a brief grammar review. There are 8 parts of speech. The noun is the word that refers to any person, place, thing, or even a feeling. For example, kindness, honesty, intelligence, love, hatred, all these. Pronouns are the words that are used in place of nouns. For example, it, you, she, I, me, mine, yours, them, this, that, those, these. All these are the pronouns. Verbs are action words like is sleeping, is doing, had done, had eaten. All these are the verbs. Adjectives describe these nouns. For example, kind, honest, intelligent, loving. Adverbs are the words or parts of speech that describe a verb. For example, running very fast. So in that case, very would be the adverb which will be describing the adjective fast, which was describing the verb running. So running very fast. So the words like very, lovingly, hatefully, intelligently, quickly, all of these words, these are the adverbs. Next, let's come to the prepositions. These are basically linking words that join these different parts of speech. For example, in, at, on, among, between. Now all these are the conjunctions. the prepositions. Conjunctions are basically the joining words like and, but, for, as, so. So all these that join two different parts of a sentence or maybe even two whole sentences, these are the conjunctions. And finally, interjections, which are not tested in the GMAT. Words like wow, oh, alas, all those that end with an exclamation sign are the interjections, so these are not tested. Let's go to the format of a sentence correction question. Let's go through this. None of the attempts to specify the causes of crime explains why most of the people exposed to the alleged causes do not commit crimes, and conversely, why so many of those not so exposed have. So you know that you are starting the sentence with do not commit crimes, you are comparing it to those not so exposed have. So you know there is no parallelism between do not and have. It should be do and do over here. So your answer will be D, not A. And as a rule, all the options A in all these sentence correction questions will be exactly the same as that in the sentence. So if you think that the sentence is correct as written, you have to choose option A as your answer. Right? So that is the format of the sentence correction question. Let's go ahead and get started with the rules. Topic that we have to cover, which is subject verb agreement, our first kind of error. Now in subject verb agreement, the first rule is that fragments are wrong. If you remember, in your school life you must have done that sentences are a group of words that make complete sense. So anything that does not make complete sense would be a fragment. And all these incomplete sentences or fragments are incorrect. A correct answer to any subject verb agreement error question must have both the subject and the verb. I'll give you an example. Killed his bear. It's making some sense that there was a bear and he was killed, but it's not making complete sense. It's a fragment or an incomplete sentence, so it is wrong. The correct form would be, for example, Ed killed his bear, or it could also be the bear was killed. Now in case of the first sentence, this is the subject Ed and this is the verb killed. And in this case, the bear is the subject and was killed is the verb. So every complete sentence must have a subject and a verb. Let's go to the next rule. Is about the subject and verb agreement, basically that the subject and verb must make sense and they should have correct meaning, as well as they must agree with one another in case of number. Have a look at this example. The development of the hybrid car based on expected efficiency parameters will be able to increase the mileage. Now in this case, if you read it carefully, it does not have a major grammatical error. However, the meaning is not correct. So you have to use a bit of common sense as well. I'm not talking about any external knowledge, but however, you need to have a lot of correct meaning and common sense, as I already told you. So what would be the correct form of this sentence? It would be that the hybrid car, which was developed based on expected efficiency parameters, will be able to increase the mileage. So it's not the development that's going to be able to increase the mileage. It's going to be the hybrid car which will increase the mileage. Similarly, let's come to the second sentence. The discovery of the new medicines were vital to the company's growth. Now here it seems as if this is the fragment, new medicines were vital. In this case it's correct. However, new medicines is not the subject. The subject is the discovery. The discovery of new medicines, or the discovery of one medicine, or discovery of a million medicines, that we are not concerned with. We are only concerned with discovery. So the discovery of the medicines was vital to the company's growth. So this should actually be the corrected form. The discovery was vital. Now I'll also tell you about some techniques that you can use to eliminate all these extra words which we call fillers. So this is the technique, eliminating the fillers. Now here we'll talk about the different kinds of fillers that you'll get so that you get confused and go towards the wrong answer. So here is how you eliminate them. The first one, prepositions. For example, you have a sentence, near London, most houses on the way to Bath is crowded. Now eliminate all the prepositional fillers. For example, near London, right? And you can eliminate this on the way. You can eliminate to Bath. So what you're left with at the end is your subject, which is most houses, and your verb, which is crowded. Now you can see there is no agreement. It should be most houses are crowded. So that is the agreement that you need to find by eliminating all these extra prepositional fillers. The second kind of fillers are the subordinate clauses. Now here, let's go ahead and read the sentence. When I drank the coffee, the manager, who was wearing the red cap with feathers, were coming to me. Now over here it seems like the red cap with feathers were coming. So just to get confused, you may seem to think that the feathers were coming, so that would be correct. However, let's remove all these subordinate clauses. For example, when I drank the coffee is removed. We remove who was wearing the red cap with feathers, so we are left with the subject, that is the manager, and the verb were coming to me, right? So here we can find out that it has to be the manager was coming to me, not were. And the third type of filler that you have is a modifier filler. For example, struggling for air, the horse, once a respected pet, was taken out. Now let's remove all these modifiers that explain us something about this subject, which is the horse. Let's remove the struggling for air, keep the horse, and once a respected pet. Again, we don't need this information, so let's keep it out. The remaining sentence has the subject the horse and the verb is was taken out. So there is no problem in this. The horse was taken out. It's absolutely correct, right? So these are the modifier fillers that you can eliminate. So you generally get really long sentences in the GMAT, and you can eliminate all these extra fillers and find out the real subject and the real verb, and then find out whether they agree in number and make sense or not. The next thing, how do we use the structure of a sentence to solve these types of questions? I'll give you some examples as well. Now, one thing to remember, a noun which is used in a prepositional phrase cannot be a subject. For example, during the last days of his life. Now most probably it will be the name of a man or a boy over here. That person which will come here, that will be the subject. We won't consider these days or the life as the subject because they are part of a prepositional phrase. Any nouns or any pronouns that come here are not going to be the subject. It is going to be the person whose last days we are talking about. Similarly, have a look at this prepositional phrase, on the borders of the land. Now most probably it will be the name of a place on the borders of the land. In this case, we will not consider borders or the land as the subject. The subject is going to be the place or the noun that is coming over here. For example, the house on the borders of the land. In that case, the subject is going to be the house. I'll give you one more example to explain this. Where I might go. For example, the sentence is the place where I might go. In that case, the place is going to be the subject, not I, right? So you need to find out what is the exact correct subject and which is the correct verb corresponding to that subject. So this is how you use the structure to solve some of the problems. The next thing, a very important difference between and, which is a conjunction, and the additive phrases. So let's have a look at what are additives. All these phrases that you can see, along with, Molly, in addition to, as well as, accompanied by, together with, including, all these are the additives. They add something to the subject which will be here. For example, if I say David along with Molly, in this case the subject is going to be only David, not Molly. So David along with Molly is doing something. So we don't have to consider what's here, whether it's singular or plural. We should not be concerned with that. It's only when we use the word and. For example, David and Molly are doing this, right? So when we're using and, then we're combining two things and making them a plural subject. But in this case, we're using all these additives, so these are not making a plural subject. For example, here, if I say economics in addition to history is my favorite subject. Now here we're not talking about two subjects, it's just economics. Let's say over here, the council members as well as the representative. Now here the subject is going to be council members, and that's plural. So we'll say council members as well as the representative are doing something. So we're not concerned with representative or representatives, we are only concerned with council members. Let's talk about this again. David, accompanied by his parents, is doing something. Again, the subject is going to be what's here, David. Let's talk about this one. Let's suppose the sentence is the students together with their teacher are doing something, because the subject is the students, not the teacher. All this is additive or extra, which we do not need to consider while checking for the subject-verb agreement. Let's look at the last example. The ingredients, including a few bay leaves, are. Now here we'll consider the subject ingredients, not these bay leaves. So ingredients are doing something. So I hope that you would have understood the difference between when we use and when we use all these additive phrases. In and, the end product is always plural, but in additive phrases, the end product depends on what comes here as the first subject. All these extra things like Molly, history, representative, parents, teacher, leaves, these should not be of our concern while checking for the subject-verb agreement errors. Let's move to the next rule, which is additives do not form part of the main subject. So this is a summary of this. Now some more subject-verb agreement errors we'll be talking about. Either and or. What to do in this case? You have either A or B. So you've got two subjects. Now in this case, you always consider the subject which is nearer to the verb. So obviously it will read like either my friend or his parents are going to come, because I am concerned with the subject which is coming over here, which will be closer to the verb. Verb will come here and this subject is closest to that verb, so I'll consider this subject, not the first one, right? It's not like the additive case, it's opposite to that, so we'll consider the second one. And this applies also to the neither nor kind of idioms. So in this case also, neither my friend nor his parents are coming, because parents are over here. But if I say neither his parents nor he is coming, because now I'm concerned with this person, it could be singular, it could be plural, and this is what will affect the kind of verb that I am going to use. The next thing, collective nouns. Now collective nouns are groups of nouns. They're always taken as singular unless we quantify them. If I'm talking about a herd of sheep, it is going to be one herd only. The herd of sheep is coming towards me. If I'm talking about two herds of sheep, in that case we can take it to be plural. For example, the two herds of sheep were fighting with each other. In that case, I'm using were because I'm talking about more than one herd of sheep. The next thing, the indefinite pronouns, these are always singular. No matter what is the word that comes after them, if there is any word that starts with any, every, some, no, or each, it always has to be singular. Anyone is coming, every person is going, something is wrong, no one is responding, each student is absent. So all these will be considered singular. So along with these, if you have words like none or each and every, all these are also singular. Now here is how do we use each and every. It's always used as singular. For example, each of the players is, every dog has his day, every dog and cat is. Now over here you see it's a plural combination, dog and cat. We've put this and, so actually the end result should have been plural, but because we've added this every, the end result is singular. That's why we're using is. Similarly over here we're talking about players, but we're talking each of the players, means every one of the players. So in that case it's going to be an is, not the are. However, there's an exception in case each is being used after a subject. In that case it has no effect whatsoever. For example, they each have a car. Now here we won't use has just because we're using each. We have used each after the subject which was they. So we will not consider each in this case. It's going to be they have a car. Similarly, the students each have. Over here also we will not change it to has just because there is an each. We will consider the main subject which is coming before each, which is the students. So the students have done something. I hope this is very clear to you. So now let's talk about the quantity words and what are subject phrases. The quantity words, for example, the number of dash is dash. It always has to be singular. Let's say the number of students is 50. Now you know that 50 as a quantity is more than 1. However, as a number, 50 is one particular number. So the same reasoning will apply here. The number of students is 28. So 28 is again one number, although the quantity is more than 1. So the number of anything is, it always has to be singular. However, if we talk about a number of, it is just the same as a lot of. So we say a number of students are, a lot of students are, so it is always considered to be plural. The next thing, half of the world is and half of the people are. Now here it does not depend whether you're using half or whatever fraction you use, it always depends on what is the subject. If you're talking about half of the world, it's still talking about the world, which is singular, so we will use a singular verb. If you're talking about half of the people or 2/5 of the people or 10% of the people, in that case we are still talking about people, which is always going to be plural. So that's why we are going to use are. The next thing, majority of the students, again, no matter what we use here, what fraction we use here, we're still talking about students, so it is going to be a plural verb. If you talk about majority of the parliament, in that case we're talking about the parliament. So it does not depend whether we talk about majority, minority, half of them, 20% of them, or 100% of them. We are still talking about the parliament, so we put is. However, if it was written the majority of the parliament members, then in that case we will say are, because we are talking about parliament members. The next thing, doing charitable things. Now here it might seem to you that we are using things, so we should use are, but this is a subject phrase, a subject which is made up of a phrase. So doing charitable things is one thing. We are doing a work, one action we are doing. What is that? We are doing charitable things. So that is one action, so we will be using is. If we say doing charitable things and enjoying a lot, in that case we are using two subject phrases which are being joined by and. So I told you whenever the two subjects are joined by and, that becomes a plural end product. So we have to take a plural verb for that, but in this case it's only one subject, doing charitable things, so we are using is. The next thing, wherever they want to go. Again, wherever they want to go. If you want to replace this entire subject, it will most probably be the name of a city or a place. So that place is singular. It's one place where they want to go. So that is why it is going to be is. The next thing, in case of some confusing sentences, which I'll show you how they can be, you need to reverse the sentence to find out whether that sentence as written is correct or not. Consider this sentence. Near the shacks stay a solitary mouse surrounded by flies. Let's say you're confused about the word stay and you don't know whether it should be stay or stays. Let's reverse the sentence. It becomes a solitary mouse surrounded by flies stays near the shack. So this should be the correct form. Instead of stay, we are using stays. Now come back to this sentence and replace this stay with stays to make it correct. Right? So this is one kind of practice that you can do to reverse these kind of sentences. Let me give you another example. There is a table and 3 chairs in the room. Now it might sound confusing that we are using and, however we are starting with a table. So should we use is or should we use are? Again, we have to reverse the sentence to check whether it has to be is or are. So when we reverse it, it becomes a table and 3 chairs. Now the end product is plural, so we are going to use are. A table and 3 chairs are there in the room. Right? Now we come back to the sentence in the original form and replace is with are. There are a table and 3 chairs in the room. Right? Let's go to the next topic. So that is all for the sentence correction, the errors that I've told you about, the rules. So most probably very soon you'll be seeing a video on some questions that have been solved on the same topic, and in the next video I'll be talking about the errors and a few important rules that you need to remember regarding verb tense, mood, and the errors related to voice. So that's all in this video for subject verb agreement. In case you want any extra videos on anything, you can please email me at pretender_89@hotmail.com. You can even visit the Facebook page and like it, and keep watching the videos for more information. Thank you for now.